and welcome to the Kaladesh World Building Panel. I'm Aaron Forsythe, Senior Director of R&D, and I'm here with all of the awesome creative talent that brought this world to life. I know that for me, this is a proud parent moment watching this world get shown off for the first time. Well, I guess they're the proud parents, and I'm the proud grandparent. But let me introduce the people that will be showing off the wonderful world of Kaladesh. This is Jeremy Jarvis, Principal Designer of Worlds and IP. Jeremy art-directed the early work when Kaladesh appeared in Magic Origins, and also art-directed the world guide for this set. Next, we have Kimberly Kreines. She's a game designer on the story team. Kimberly was on the world-building team for Kaladesh, and she led the names and flavor text for this set. After that, we have Beyer, senior designer on the story team. Hey. Doug was the creative lead and lead card conceptor for Kaladesh, and he was on both the initial and final card set design team, so I think he spent more hours with this set than anyone.
Very excited.
And finally over there is Ari Levitch, a game designer on the story team. He was also on the world building team for Kaladesh, and he was the lead card conceptor for Etherborn, which will be the small set that follows after this, so you'll get to see most of his work a bit later. All right, so I'm going to hand it off to Jeremy, and he's going to get us started.
Okay, hello people, welcome. Thank you for attending. So was anyone not at the opening ceremonies? Okay, so we have a few people. So gonna do a little bit of a rewind and recap. So the year is 2013. When did we start working on Origins?
Yeah, that sounds right.
We knew, because we plan years out, you probably know that after Innistrad, we wanted to do another artifact block. And we didn't want it to be a blank slide. We didn't want it to be Mirrodin, because Mirrodin is currently new Phyrexia, correct? Yep, it's pretty cool, but it might not be super cool after 6 months of Gothic horror, right? So we wanted to do something else with the artifact slot. So, yeah, Scars of Mirrodin, of course. We wanted it to be different. We wanted it to feel fresh. We wanted it to be bright and colorful. And we wanted it to be tonally different, right? We wanted a different narrative, a different story, more color, more optimism, and probably a little less of that. Like, they're still curly cues, but they're nicer curly cues.
That's
right. So we started working on Kaladesh for Magic Origins. Now, this is off schedule, right? Origins was going to be our last core set. We knew that. We were trying to figure out something special to do with it, something special to celebrate. Ideas were bandied about, and eventually it became about the origin stories of the 5 characters. And it's like, okay, well, typically there's not concept art done for a core set. That's okay, that's fine, though. I know people. I can start some redesign. We need young versions of the characters. That's great. Then it became about 10 places. 3 of them we didn't know about, we had not been to, and one of them, Kaladesh, that we knew we were going to go to. So my 2 options were, it's either going to be real good in hindsight, or it's going to be real bad. So we started working a year early off schedule on Magic Origins to pre-visualize Kaladesh. This is some of that early visualization work that informed what we did with Magic Origins. So you notice that in these early plates, you're not seeing ether in the sky, you're not seeing those ribbons. We didn't know if the energy mechanic was going to stick or not. Not yet, we didn't. So we wanted to show the place, but we weren't fully sure about everything. So in Kaladesh, the impetus was steampunk, right? That was our starting place. Magic does steampunk. What does that mean? So eventually, steampunk became etherpunk. And let's talk through how we ended up at trying to create a veneer of a fantastical India.
Right, so we started with this kernel of ether. We knew that once the Kaladesh team, the design teams and development teams were focusing on this ether mechanic, we knew that ether was going to be a crucial resource in the world of Kaladesh. So that's kind of where we started. Kaladesh doesn't just have access to ether like other planes. We've heard of this ether before. It suffuses the multiverse. But Kaladesh has an actual ether sphere way up in the high atmosphere. So this is a place that's built around that. So that was our starting place. And we thought, what's the ecosystem that is generated from a place that has that kind of access to raw ether. We know there's going to be a fuel source, a kind of electricity or gasoline for wondrous inventions for inventors, but it has to do with the living ecosystem of Kaladesh as well. So as streams of ether go through the ethersphere, we see how that flows through the rest of the ecosystem and affects the way that plants grow, the way that creatures form their patterns on their fur and that sort of thing. So, and it conjures everything. We just wanted to have a slight twist. We didn't want to do steampunk straight up. Again, Jeremy said, we just been seeing Gothic horror and the darkness of the Eldrazi. We want a place that's fresh.
So, Doug, what you're saying is that ether kind of fills the role of steam.
Right.
That we're not going to do boilers and cranks
and
things like that.
The problem with steam is that you get polluted skies, you get darkness, you get grimy London, right? So India was an inspiration to bring a fresh take to steampunk, and that's what got us to etherpunk.
You get all of the upside without getting the downside of the steam and the pollution.
Right. We love the shapes, the color, all of that stuff. Now, because we were like, let's do a different cultural inspiration. We don't want the monocles and the top hats. It shouldn't be dirty. I don't want a whole set full of brown, rusty stuff. We don't want smoggy skies. We didn't even know what a gear looked like. That's what this slide is. This is the exploration. This is Cynthia Shepard exploring, working backwards from jewelry, what a gear could look like on Kaladesh. That was the start, like there is nothing like this. And so we had to resolve for the gear, and then we were able to blow those gears out into entire creatures, entire buildings and places, and peacocks. It's a very nice peacock. And so that is, to Doug's earlier point, what the people are doing with the ether is inventing with it. So this is exactly what we didn't want. This is what we did want. So this is a visualization of how the people collect ether and how integral it is to the ecosystem, to their infrastructure, and a very good example of someone inventing with it.
And the inspiration for the ether in the first place came from the gameplay that Mark Rosewater and his team were coming up with, the energy mechanic.
Right, yeah. When we're really firing on all cylinders, the creative half of R&D, the world and story, and the design and development half of R&D are constantly communicating, working lockstep, so that the mechanical premise is reflected in the world premise and vice versa.
So we talked a little bit about the ether sphere here, and I want to show you some of the concept art that led to the look of ether on this plane. This is Sam Burley, if I'm right.
I believe so.
And you can see how the land has even the foliage here takes on that shape, that swirling shape of ether. And that goes through an entire system, through the entire ecosystem. We'll see a little bit more about how ether drives invention and sort of the creative process. Kaladesh is supposed to be about innovation, about creativity. These are elements that are already in Magic, but Kaladesh is focusing on that and honing in on it. You can even see how patterns in the creatures here, the horns of the rams, that sort of thing, mimic that swirling shape. This place has some of the prettiest basic lands of any place you'll see, I swear. So that leads into, we still wanted this to be a Magic world, so we're looking at what's Kaladesh take on established creature types like Leviathan or Angel and Dragon. So this is a Magic world, so we're taking that inspiration and interpreting a lot of Magic staples through that lens.
So next, we started talking about we're beyond the environment, now we're to the city. So how do the people design their cities, that the people that are living in this brilliant, wondrous world just infused with ether? So of course we said they're going to take inspiration from the environment around them and use that to influence the design of the cities. So we talked about the major city, which is Girapur. It's the biggest city on the plane. And we talked about how the filigree is going to be shaped like the tree branches, and how everything is just going to mimic those beautiful shapes that you see in the skies, that you see in the foliage all around the world. And the colors are bright and vibrant. These people just bring the inspiration of their world home with them, and then they build their cities to reflect that. So the other thing is that these cities, when we were thinking about it, you live in this world where ether is up in this ether sphere, in this high strata, and it's going to come down in swells, and it's this powerful, life-bringing substance, and it comes down to the land sometimes, dipping down to infuse the world. And the people don't want to build their cities to block that out. They want to build their cities to open up to it. So you'll notice, like, this is a bridge, and the idea here is that the bridge can open, it can breathe open and let the ether in. So the city is like inhaling, it's a living entity, and you'll notice a lot of gears, a lot of things that look like they're movable, like they could come alive. So we wanted the city to feel like it was just as inspired by the world as the people are.
I actually got teased by a team member I will not name. My rhetoric around all of the way I wanted Kaladesh to have formed was that before they were good with metal, even the stonework is beautiful, right? Everything is super deliberate, laid out almost in that mindset of an Imagineer. Someone really cared about how people moved and how the city built itself up, and then they built on top of that, and then they built movable pieces on top of that, and then it's about craft. Oh, it's about craft. Everything is pretty and maintained and always was, and this guy was like, Jeremy, you realize that your brilliant world building is just everyone has a job and they're good at it? Like, that's your thing? I was like, oh, fair. That works.
It works. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And they're inspired. So speaking of people being inspired, this is a plate of a couple final art. So there's two different ways that we sort of looked at it. One is on the left, you'll notice the greenery, the trees and plants are actually incorporated in with the buildings, and what better way to know that you're opening your city to ether than by just building along with the plants and trees that are already there. And then the other plate shows just the city, it's blown out. This is just totally inspired by the mountains that they see, the trees that they see, everything. It's the whole world just opened up. So yes, we talked about the patterns that you'll see in the skies, also reflect this. And so then the people here, they're inspired by it as well. And this brilliant energy, life-bringing force up there, they're going to find a way to harness it. And they did. An inventor, Avati, she came up with a process to refine the ether. So up in the ether sphere, it's volatile and it's potentially dangerous, and they don't necessarily want to use the raw substance. So she came up with this refinement process that they can refine the ether and use ether to power their inventions. So then working along with the consulate, which is the governing body in the largest city of Girapur, they figured out a way to build these huge, you're looking at these ether spires that are collecting the ether from that ether sphere, bringing it in, refining it, and then piping it out through the city. And the idea here is that this is the most amazing place you could ever live, because no matter who you are, no matter where you are in the city or far from the city, you're going to have access to this ether, and it's flowing through these pipes, and they're transparent, so you can see this magical lifeblood just piping out to people, and you're inspired by it, and you want to use it, and you want to invent. And that is exactly what the people here do.
So when we're working on this world, we're working on the design of the place, we looked at the color pie. So every world, we have to figure out what's green about this place, what's a swamp going to look like, what are green creatures going to look like. But this place, we knew it was going to be full of artifacts and artifact mechanics. And we didn't want Mirrodin, where green was the I hate artifacts color and that sort of thing. Like, we wanted a new take on how each color approached artifacts and ether. So we come up with different labels for each color and to describe how each color focuses on ether. So that's going to describe a kind of flow through the colors, and that's a process that mimics the creative process of the inventor. White is about building. Blue is about innovating. Black's about reclaiming ether back into the system. Red is actually about liberating. This slide is not quite right.
Yeah, we're tripping up a little bit because this is an old build of the PowerPoint, so I'm constantly confused.
Green's about inspiring from nature. So we took these terms to kind of guide the development process and make sure the colors felt correct for Kaladesh here. And each color also represents not only a step in this ether cycle, but a race that focuses on that color.
What step does it start with, Doug?
It starts with green, in fact.
That's not Wooberg.
Oh my goodness. Can you do
Mind's
that?
blown. That's Doug's fault.
Totally Doug's fault.
That's true.
So I want to go into a little bit about the logic behind our decisions with the races that populate Kaladesh and that kind of embody these aspects of the ether cycle. The first part of the process is green, and it is about elves. And the elves are the ones that, it's interesting because, like Doug said, we didn't want green to be in opposition to what this world is about, which is about kind of innovation, and it is very positive and optimistic. So we had to figure out a way to, what race would work here in a situation where they would be a part of this world and kind of and add to it. And so the elves here, we took this idea of elves being closer to nature, and we wrapped that into how they interact with ether. And the way they do it is elves are ether seers. They could see ether in a way that other races can't. And they're brought into the cities to kind of help build the cities in a way that accommodates the flow of ether. They understand it on a level that other races simply do not. It informs the way they make artifacts. They incorporate shapes of nature and the way that ether manipulates nature, and they bring it into their artifacts. Again, yeah, they are the ether seers. They are the ones that understand the way it works in nature, and they go and then inspire other races. Then we go on to the next step in the ether cycle, which is innovate. And Vedalken we're trying to figure out what is the best magic race that we have to fit in this slot. And we settled on Vedalken fairly quickly because they are typically about science. But in previous iterations of the Vedalken, they were kind of like dispassionate, more aloof, and we decided that's not really in line with what this world is all about. And the Vedalken here are more about just insatiable curiosity. They actually love the detail work. They revel in the notion that there's imperfections everywhere, but if you keep iterating, you can keep finding those imperfections and keep improving on things.
Sometimes they even smile. That's new for Vedalken this time.
Also new, they can have hair.
That's true.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to go back one real quick, too. If you notice, I don't know if you can see in this particular slide, but Vedalken here have 6 fingers on either hand. And it really plays to this concept of being detail-oriented. And if we look at their adornments, they're very meticulous, they're very intricate. And if you look at the tools that they use, it requires a lot of dexterity and mastery. And again, this focus on the detail work really is what kind of defines the Vedalken here. And we have a new character.
So let's talk about Dovin Bond for a second. We've already met Dovin Bond in the Magic story. Dovin Bond is a Vedalken planeswalker who's from this world. And he went to fetch the Gatewatch from Ravnica because he suspected that there was a potential threat to the Inventor's Fair that's going on. So we're going to see a card of Dovin Bond eventually later this weekend. But for now, we just hear about his story. But we wanted to showcase how a super detail-oriented Vedalken could play a role in the story. Dovin Bond's power suite is that he can focus on a system and find a flaw in it, no matter how complicated it is. So that makes him an amazing inventor. He's also great at finding any potential threat to the grand system of the Inventor's Fair.
I just want to point out that the next slide is going to show a kind of personal triumph of mine. Oops.
Not John Millard. Next slide.
I'll take that back. This one.
This one.
Yay, everyone.
If I do nothing else in Magic, and this is it. I get dwarves back in Magic, then I have done my part. So.
Ari's a gigantic fan, and yeah, he worked on the world building for dwarves in this world. He might even, some might say, even resemble a dwarf in some ways.
A little bit. So the dwarves here resemble or embody the build part of the ether cycle. It was actually an interesting challenge for white because we were trying to look for a white-aligned race in Magic, and there are different options, but we really felt that a lot of the trope space that dwarves occupy, the kind of the work ethic, the ability to just work, endlessly, and the paying attention to quality, it felt more white than anything else. And so if you take them just out of living in mountains, they actually feel very, very white aligned. And so it fit here pretty quickly, and also because I insisted. So
he was kind of a pain about it, really.
We thanked him in the end.
You pick your battles. So. The dwarves here, they always look like they're ready to work. They never tire. Craftsmanship is valued above everything for a dwarf. For a dwarf, the most beautiful machine is the machine that functions the way it's supposed to function. And so they are just the embodiment of the build part of the cycle. I mean, their tools are very sturdy. They talk of their tools like other people would talk of their own children. And and they are just wonderful, and I love them. This takes us to the opposite end of the color pie, but the next step in the ether cycle, which is the liberate part of the cycle. All the machines on Kaladesh are powered by ether, and there are some, there's a particular creature here, the Gremlins, that love to feast on ether. So they are the bane of every inventor on Kaladesh, but they are wonderful as well.
But they're so cute.
They are adorable.
They are truly
Painfully
adorable.
So, Ari, can they talk?
They cannot talk. They're not one of the sapient races of Kaladesh, but they are definitely very present in the cities.
What I found fascinating about the choice for Gremlins is that not only is Kaladesh a lot brighter and more colorful than the previous worlds, but it's a lot less violent. And so trying to solve for what red would do in this world, and coming up with this is a pretty brilliant choice.
They're trash pandas for inventions. That's what they are.
So Gremlins are a fascinating race here. They have corrosive saliva that helps them break into machines to get at the ether. They have this kind of loose-hanging skin on them when they haven't eaten, and then when they actually feast on ether, they kind of fill out and become more formidable and also more adorable.
Always cuter.
And again, they are kind of a plague for most inventors here, and dwarves actually hate them probably more than anyone because they want their machines to last forever.
You have to spray for them frequently on Kaladesh.
That's a true thing. And then finally, the last stage of the ether cycle is the reclaim part of the process. And black, just like green had its own challenges about how do you have green in an artifact world. Well, what do you do with black in a very optimistic world? And so it had its own kind of set of challenges. We knew pretty early on we don't really want to get into necromancy here. So what do we do? And what we realized is, let's create a race that is of the city, that are the kind of ultimate consumers of everything the city has to offer. And the etherborn are literally the byproduct of ether refinement. Instead of smog, you get life, and which is as optimistic as you're going to get. The etherborn here, they're the patrons of the arts. They love going to races, and they love seeing automaton fights, and they never sleep. They actually literally never sleep because they only live from a few months to a few years. Their lifespans are very, very short. And for an etherborn, if you're not spending every minute living life to the fullest, it's a waste.
So this is a legendary etherborn you're going to meet. So etherborn are the consummate urbanites, and Gonti is a bit of a crime lord. Gonti loves to possess things, including possessing your stuff, if possible. Gonti has quite a collection, and you'll be able to see this in his card. I mean, we could show his card if we wanted to, I guess.
So this is Gonti. He's got lots of words on him, but they're worth it. The card is super fun. So they is the closest thing to a crime lord that exists here on Kaladesh. And as Doug said, Gonti covets things. He covets your things, and that's what the card does. When Gonti enters the battlefield, you look at the top 4 cards of an opponent's library. You get to take one of them, and then hang on to it and play it whenever you want to, as long as Gonti is still around. And you can spend your mana as any man of any color. So, super griefer.
Aaron likes this card.
I love it. I just love it. It's just like, I took one of your cards and you don't know what it is, but you'll see when I use it against you. It's just it's an awesome feeling. Fun commander, and just a great card all around.
That does sound optimistic.
Yeah, so we're just super excited about introducing etherborn. I don't know if you noticed on the Gonti card, but etherborn is a new creature type, so we're very excited about that.
Finally, humans, last but not least, we definitely wanted people here. This is the world where Chandra's from and her parents. We did a lot of work to focus on humans as the synthesizers of this ether cycle. They're ultimately the most sort of over-the-top creative and fearless inventors here, and they will take from any source of inspiration to bring an invention together. So they're operating, like, without humans, the ether cycle would never turn into industry on Kaladesh. That's how we...
Jeremy, you can see in the costuming the real-world India influences here, but it's not what we might associate with steampunk, the kind of colonial India.
Yeah, it's a kind of a serpentine story of we wanted Chandra to be from here, the double A's in her last name, plus the kind of Britishness of original of what traditional steampunk is, when you do have the brown and the gear and the monocle. And then we were like, oh, well, we could combine those things and it's India. And then we were like, yeah, but colonialism's not all super awesome. Like, spoilers, actual world history is not always that optimistic. So we were like, okay, well, maybe we keep the India part visually and just scrape out the colonial stuff, and we don't have the monocle and none of that influence, and we build from there, and just really try to celebrate the shapes and colors and people of this kind of imaginary, fantastical India. And here are examples.
And we're really excited about the result here. This has been a long time coming. This filtering through origins was really challenging, maybe, for Jeremy and many of his team.
Oh, it's not maybe. It's not maybe.
Yeah, so this is basically like, hey, Jeremy, is it okay if 10% of Origins is actually a world we're going to see a year later? Right. And make sure that everything we're saying in Origins is something awesome and people get people excited, so that when we actually go to Kaladesh, they'll be like, we're really eager to go there.
Right. To get it done, I actually pulled people off of the Shadows over Innistrad concept push and started them working on Origins. So that's resource management, which is also a part of Kaladesh.
That's true. That's
Then
true.
we hired one of those artists, by the way.
That's true.
Cynthia Shepard worked on that.
Cynthia Shepard now works for us full time, which we're very excited about. Sahili Rai is obviously a human being. She's from this world, and she's a Planeswalker character you've met already as of Wednesday in Kimberly's story. She's an amazing inventor on Kaladesh, has the ability to transmute metals from one to another, which makes her, just gives her a great edge in inventing. She's also a Planeswalker, so she actually moves from world to world. Her inspiration is the entire multiverse. That's what feeds her creativity and shows her what to sculpt with metal. We'll see more of Sahili throughout the story as the Magic story continues. So, this is about pilots?
No.
Okay.
This is also a human. That's why the slide's here. Also a human that we are fond of.
I just really love this piece. In the background of this piece, you can actually see a symbol that this Renegade Inventor has spray painted. We'll see more about that symbol soon.
So after we talked about all of the different races that populate this place, we started digging deep into their culture. So what are they like? And this is a world of inventors. So inventors here, we imagined that you have people inventing all kinds of things, and that naturally they're going to sort of flock together with like-minded individuals and build off each other, riff on each other's inventions, and live in a place where they can inspire each other, where they can challenge each other, where they can compete and one-up and make the coolest thing. So we took Girapur and we thought about dividing it into zones, neighborhoods where like-minded inventors could get together. So what you're looking at here is Free Jam, and Free Jam is a hub for aeronauts. And aeronauts are always thinking up, they're thinking high, they're thinking vertical, so you'll see the spires here. So the neighborhoods and the designs you see are inspired by the type of people who live there. And so this is one example. In contrast to this, we have Greenwheel. So a lot of our elves, originally, as Ari was mentioning, are ether seers, very in tune with the natural world. A lot of them hailed from a region called Pima and came to Girapur to get involved with the Inventors' Renaissance. And when they did, they found a little bit of their home in Greenwheel. It was a place where ether can flow freely, and they cultivate these enormous biodomes where they analyze the way ether influences various ecosystems throughout the world, and they find inspiration there. So Greenwheel is actually a place where a lot of the inspiration starts, and just like we were mentioning with the invention cycle starting with green rather than white, it kicks things off here. And this is one of my personal favorite zones. It's Weldfast. So Weldfast is built around one of Girapur's ether hubs. And the hub is where we're sending ether out throughout the whole world. So a lot of people in Weldfast work at the hub by day. But by night is when this zone really gets fun. So they have access to all of the ether that they could ever imagine. They don't want to let a drop go to waste. So these inventors are just building things, whatever they can think of, and infusing them with ether, and they put on what they call sudden spectacles, and they're like, look what I did, and poof, and it's gone, but that's okay, because there's going to be one tomorrow and one the next day. So the inventors of Weldfast really embody that spirit of Kaladesh. And they're going to be some of the most excited to come to the Inventors Fair. From all over the world. Everybody's coming.
This is also Kaladesh. There we go. There we go.
To the Inventors Fair. So at the Inventors Fair, we're going to be seeing everybody flocking from the furthest reaches, from all over Girapur. Girapur's opening their streets. They're welcoming everybody. And this is where our story begins.
Here is a new thing that I am very excited to talk about, Story Spotlight cards. Story's been represented on Magic cards for a long time now, but somehow it's difficult, from time to time to tell exactly what is super legit, what just happens to be showing Jace or Chandra, and what's a really important beat. So we're calling them out now. You can see here that on a Story Spotlight card, there is a watermark of the Planeswalker symbol to alert you that, hey, this is one of them. This is important. There is the sequentiality, the context. This is number 1 of 5, the Inventors Fair. And then over on the right is mtgstory.com, a new URL that you can go to and dig right into this story. So that is new. And I don't mind bragging on our writing professionals that the web fiction is our highest traffic article that exists on the website already. So if there are people out in the world that don't realize that a card game can have a story that's not a cartoon, oh, we do. So now there's a URL to help connect them, and we are very excited by that.
So just a brief bit about what's happening at the Inventors Fair. So first of all, it's really cool that we're all here at the Inventors Fair at PAX. And so a little bit of what you're going to be seeing at the Inventors Fair in Girapur. So there's judges here. You can recognize them with the red face paint. And actually, the judges are inventors famous in their own right. So the thing about Kaladesh is that if you're an inventor, you're a celebrity. It's just awesome to be this genius, creative, artistic, like this is the world where you can be who you want to be, and they're inspired, there are statues built of them, everything, to be an inventor is it. So everybody is flocking from all over the world to be that next big name, and they're bringing all of their inventions with them, from the small little servos. We have, these mystical panharmonicons that are going to, just bewitch everybody with their music. We have the newest inventions in aeronautics, and even these huge, towering gear hulks. You can see this one is of elvish design. It incorporates that living tree into it. So like everybody brings a little bit of their own thing to the fair. And then, as we all heard, vehicles. We were so excited to run with vehicles when design and development said, we're going to do this. It's so perfect in a steampunk world. And so our inventors are doing everything. They've got their vehicles on oval chase racetrack, the fastest, speediest. And then they have these gigantic skyships, like a whole city is on this thing. And this is consulate inventors have made this skyship.
This is the Sky Sovereign. This is the sort of the jewel of the consulate fleet. If Sky Sovereign floats above your district, then you are in trouble. This guy lays down the law, and you will be able to collect Sky Sovereign in this set.
Boom.
Oh my!
So we saw in the in the opening ceremony when Mark Rosewater debuted vehicle, the one that he showed off, the Oval Chase Dragster, had crew 1. So you just needed a single 1-power creature in order to run the dragster. But Sky Sovereign here is a bigger deal. 5 mana, 6/5 flying. There's got to be some catch, and the catch is you got to get 3 power of creatures in order to turn this thing on. But once you do, holy moly! When it enters the battlefield or attacks, so we're talking, Titan territory here, 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker and opponent controls. So, as Doug said, when this thing's in your neighborhood, you're in trouble, and you're going to get blasted over and over again by the Sky Sovereign.
So where there are vehicles, there must be pilots, and pilots on Kaladesh do not mess around. They are daredevils. They are willing to take any risk on any experimental design. They're not worried about crashing a few. I mean, if you can walk away, then it was a successful test. And so we'll show you a particular pilot here.
Thank you. So this is Depala. Depala is a dwarf pilot. She flies for an aeronaut society called the Derby Crows. She's known for being very reckless, but like a daredevil, and just one of the best pilots in the entire city. And Commander players rejoice.
Yeah.
So just to point out, if you look at the mana cost, both white and red are in the mana cost, which means old dwarves and new dwarves. If you're interested in doing a dwarf tribal deck, which I am.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so she's a dwarf lord, a vehicle lord, a 3 mana 3/3 on top of all that. And the way the pilot creature type works in this set is any creature can crew a vehicle. Any creature with a power can crew a vehicle. So humans, elves, walls, sapperlings, whatever. Anything can drive a car. But pilots, when you use them to crew vehicles, they have some benefit. And hers is when she becomes tapped, so that's what you do to crew a vehicle, is tap the creature. You can pay mana to start looking for more dwarves and vehicles. So it's a super awesome card. Should make for some fun themed standard decks, commander decks, whatever it takes. It's an awesome card.
I believe
we have some time for some questions. Thank you guys very, very, very much.
All right, before we get started, we have about 10 minutes for questions, but there is going to be a creative Q&A tomorrow if we can't get through everything with a lot of these folks as well for a whole hour of Q&A. So we're going to get through what we can today.
Thank you. So I stood here about half a decade ago, and we asked for representation, and y'all brought it. We have a trans character, we have a gender non-binary character, we have an autistic character. Thank you. When can we look forward to see characters that have more diversity besides gender, sexuality, and skin color, like characters with different abilities physically, and also characters that might be fat?
That's definitely something we care about. I mean, is that something that other people would be interested in here?
And we know. You have seen the progress we've made, how we've broadened the roster. I hope you guys can tell that it's important to us and that we care. So what we're not doing is releasing just a burst that feels super tokenistic, which is what I believe you said you didn't want at the Innistrad panel. You're like, just make sure it's not a token. I remember. It was a good line. And he's got a great voice, so it's memorable. There's a good voice. So you have to also remember that what you're seeing right now is a capture of us 2 years ago, right? And what you saw 2 years before was 4 years ago. And just like waiting on Kaya to come out, when we get these questions, it's like, oh my God, the art's done. We know what the card does. We love her, and we can't talk about it. So we're working, and in 2 years, you'll see what we've done now. And, you know, in the meantime, we care. We super care.
In the meantime, thank you for the new USS Enterprise for my commander deck.
So you mentioned that green and black had some special challenges for inclusion in this set. And I'm interested in the contrast between green relying on an already existing creature type in elves versus black. You made the decision to bring in a new type to Magic. What was different about those two challenges that led to that distinction between the two colors?
I think elves, when we're looking at particularly, I'll start with green. First of all, we haven't done elves in a while. Like that was, you know, we didn't see them in Innistrad. So we wanted to know, first of all, is there a way for elves to fit here? And when we thought more and more about the tropes, elf tropes, it was, elves being close to nature and understanding it. And it's like, you know what, that actually fits. It's not at odds with this society. Considering this society is optimistic, this society does want to, it takes its inspiration from nature already with all of the natural shapes and the way ether informs nature. So elves just really turned out that they were just a great fit for it. So for black, because of, a lot of the black-aligned races, particularly if you have zombies, and that didn't really work. And necromancy just didn't seem like a good fit. And so that just seemed like that was one that needed something new.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge of giving people the creature types that they already know and love versus trying to introduce something new. I mean, we want your old cards and new cards to work together, or you to get things for your decks, but we also don't want to say, you've seen everything we're ever going to make already. That's certainly not true. So it's a balancing act between new and old that we are constantly trying to walk that tightrope. Go ahead.
Hi, I just want to say, love everything you're doing with the sets nowadays. One thing I was curious about is how does creative deal with, in reprint sets or sets like Conspiracy, where you have the one-off card that's like Phyrexian Arena and Conspiracy 2, where you just drop the, Koth's still here.
Yeah, so it's a judgment call, case by case. Conspiracy was odd, the original, in that it was largely reprint, but not all. It was a new play style, and we really thought we could have treated it like a core set, and just wherever in the multiverse, whatever, but we really felt like we wanted to capture that kind of Game of Thrones intrigue feeling, and we wanted to create a setting for that. And so then it's like, do we re-facelift all of the reprints? And so we kind of drew a line in the sand between things being reprinted and all new cards are set on this new place that represent the play style and the feeling and try to represent the fun. And then just card by card, we have X amount of spins of where we can do fun things, like the Elish Norn route or like Phyrexian Arena. And we just accept that on the reprints, we're just going to use it as a venue to either just make it look great or check in with a character from time to time or just do something fun with it and let the new stuff be the new stuff. Does that make sense?
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, my question is about the etherborn. How do they interact with the people of Kaladesh? What do the people of Kaladesh think of them? Do they revere them? And what's the etherborn's motivation on Kaladesh?
First of all, it's hard for other people to keep up with the etherborn. Etherborn just all day, every day, just kind of live life to the fullest. And for other people, that would be like burning the candle at both ends. But they are a ton of fun. It's I think, energizing to be around them until it's exhausting.
I think they bring a lot, they inspire the people a lot, even though they're not the inspiration step of the ether cycle, because they're the consumers of a lot of these inventions, and they're the patrons, they're the sponsors. They want the next coolest thing because they want to use it, they want to consume it. So I think they're pushing the people to invent more, even if not directly. They're really a critical part of the society.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shivam Bhatt, and I've been writing about Kaladesh since literally the day you gave us the name. And as a Magic player of Indian descent, I was, shall we say, hesitant about this set. And you guys have done a pretty phenomenal job so far from what I've seen. But I get the feeling that it's like what Mauro said about Theros, in that Theros was a Greek set, not an enchantment set. And similarly, this is an inventor set, but not an India set. So why did you choose India to use as the shell for this? I think it's fascinating. I love the fact that I can finally see myself in the game I've played for 2/3 of my life. But Chandra still doesn't look desi, right?
That's
She's
true.
got freckles, dude.
That's
There's no
true. That's
freckles in
true.
India.
That's true.
I don't know, man. This is so difficult for me to even stand here and talk to you guys about this because I'm so grateful there are no Loxodon in this set. I'm so happy there are no four-armed Vedalken in this set. You guys avoided all of the tokenization that my culture has had for generations. So I'm just curious, what did you take?
Right. So one of the ways that we worked with consultants for this set was to avoid pit traps, avoid stereotypes, do not use sacred imagery, do not, or if we're going to take a symbol from an Indian culture, take it in a way that makes sense for this world and interpret it in such a way that it would be exciting to someone of Indian descent. So that was part of the conversation all the way through. So yes, Kaladesh was initially an inventor's world rather than top-down India. This is not going to deliver you all the stories based on history of India.
And that really is a critical distinction. Like, to your point, like, Theros is one thing, right? No one is worshiping Zeus currently. Like, we are free to play in that mythology and reimagine it and use the known tropes and genres and all of that stuff. We weren't going to do that here. Like, it's a rich culture with living religions. It's very diverse in beliefs that are still real. So no, we weren't going to do the Loxodon, and there are not gods in the set. We weren't going to do it. And so it is, I can't tell if you're disappointed that it's just kind of a veneer or a shell, but like
I'm still waiting.
We want people to be able to see themselves in the game, and if we're not going to do a top-down India out of respect that it is a vibrant and living culture and with religion, then where do we use it? And so that kind of weird serpentine through steampunk, Victorian, colonial to not colonial, and just to make something new. Like, again, back to the origin story, Google, and try to find anything that looks remotely like this. And our mantra, when we are dealing with...
Thank you, Shiva.
Sorry.
That was good, though. That was good. I'm going to give you that one. I would have been pleased with me if I did that. Is that we want to celebrate. We don't want a cartoon. And a lot of times, Literally, cartoons are what have done it. That's a really good starting place to see how a culture or a people have been cartooned and mocked, and we don't want to do that. We just want to be able to represent in a way that is celebratory, and Kaladesh just seemed perfect for that. So,
yeah. I mean, as the comic Hari Kondobalu has said, the character Apu on The Simpsons, who was literally the only Indian I had for my entire life, was a white guy pretending to be a white guy making fun of my father. And I'm glad that what you've given me here is not that. I am withholding judgment until we see the set because I love tinkers and inventions and gnomes and all this stuff. So I'm not going to be like, oh, you failed me. But I'm watching you, wizards.
Thank you for doing so. Thanks, everybody. So tomorrow at 4, we have a creative Q&A panel where you can come ask questions for an entire hour. It's about all the time we have today. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we'll be following this up with the mechanics panel. Mark Rosewater and other designers and developers will be up here walking you through more of the nuts and bolts gameplay of how the set came together in just a few moments. So stick around.
Thank you.
Thank you.